Hey everybody, I just wanted to try something different. I used to do this in my podcast where I would review books that I've read and look at them from the perspective of how I can use them in a role-playing game. So this will have some strong opinions in it. If you don't like strong opinions, then this video might not be for you. And probably all my reviews of just general fiction books or non-fiction books that from this perspective will have strong opinions in them. I can't help it. I'm an opinionated guy. So, that being said, I'm going to dive right in here. This is the Harassment Architecture by Mike Ma. So, this book is really interesting. It doesn't have a structure. It doesn't follow any kind of pattern. It's just a random sort of word salad mind vomit from the author. It was adequately written, I would say. I certainly didn't stop reading it. I will stop reading books sometimes. I don't like to. I like to finish a book just in case the author has some sort of interesting point to make. Very often you won't discover it until the end of the book. But I will stop if I feel like the book is doing damage. If it's so poorly written that I can't stomach it. But this book wasn't like that at all. It doesn't have a plot, and it doesn't seem to have a reason for existing, actually, except as a rant against the world. Now, the author states in the book that the main character does not share his own worldviews and stuff, and I find that really reassuring, because the main character is really a pile of garbage. The main character, the whole book itself is basically a temper tantrum, because the main character can't get what they want from the world, so they want to burn the world down as a result of it. I don't know how many times the book, the main character refers to burning the world down, and then in the back there's about 10 pages dedicated just to recruiting people to try and burn the world down. Which, I could understand it if you've got some sort of idea of what could replace it, but he doesn't. He just wants to see it burn because he's pissed off because, I don't know, he doesn't have the latest PlayStation 5. And nowhere in the book does he ever have any sort of sense that perhaps, the reason for that lies with him and not the society around him. And so the main character basically fantasizes about mass killings, mass shootings. Really terrible. Reminded me of sort of what it might be like to stare into the mind of a gulag guard, but not a regular gulag guard, a gulag guard that enjoyed torturing the prisoners. I think he nailed that. I think that's what this is. The main character is basically a nihilist and a relativist, which I have nothing wrong with. I don't think there's anything wrong with those perspectives. I know a lot of people don't like those perspectives. But you can reason through those perspectives and still finding meaning in life. Just because you're a nihilist and you're a relativist doesn't mean everything's off the table and you can do whatever you want. Far from it. It's a perspective that is very difficult and requires years of studying and getting through to understand, that is not indeed what relativism or nihilism means. It's like Nietzsche says, if you stare into the void long enough, the void will stare back into you. And this is absolutely true. And this character has managed to stare into the void, but didn't do the work needed to get through it. And I don't blame him. I think that it's a very difficult journey for sure. One book I will say that would be a good antidote for this is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. This book is amazing. It does provide a light through the journey of nihilism. And even relativism. It argues that the meaning of life is in the repercussions of our actions. That's what gives our lives meaning. And I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with him. If you can agree that your own suffering and the suffering of other people is an undesirable outcome. Basically, that's the launching pad. So anyway, I think this main character could have gained a lot from reading that book. So what is interesting about this book, and the parts of it that I did find interesting, obviously not the structure. Like I say, it has no plot. It just sort of meanders around the person's life as, you know, from temper tantrum to temper tantrum. At every point, he's basically imagining violence, imagining acts of violence against police, against society in general, etc. Because, and like I say, in no point, at no point in the book is there any introspection about what he could do to get the things that he wants out of life, or what he could do to improve his situation, or even what changes to society could be made so that he wouldn't feel this way. And, you know, and basically that's the perspective of a very spoilt child, in my opinion. If you give a child everything when they're growing up, they're going to end up like this. That's what I think anyway. They're going to end up thinking, because if you make a child's life too easy, they don't have goals, everything's just handed to them, then when they become adults, they get disenfranchised with the world because they feel like everything is too difficult. Well, the world is difficult and it's competitive. I mean, that's just a fact of it. And so this main character, I think, you know, insofar as it might apply to real life, I think his parents probably overindulged him and didn't teach him that things can be tough, you know. And so I would say that's the main failing there in this character. So what I did find interesting about it was the word salad. Combinations of words and terms, random. Reminded me a little bit of William Gibson. Not the genius of William Gibson, but the word salad-y effect of William Gibson. If you don't know who William Gibson was, he was a science fiction author, is a science fiction author. But he got very famous for his books in the 80s, and I believe the early 90s. I think his books came out in the 80s. Don't quote me on that, though. So, but he put together terms and stuff, and a lot of the terms we use today actually come from William Gibson's books. And so, sort of in that perspective, not the genius of William Gibson, not in the incredible, breathtaking way that he put together terms, but in the sort of randomness, the way that things are put together in this book, remind me of that. Another interesting thing about this book is that it seems to be full of shock value, trying to shock people by just coming out with more and more outrageous things to say. Personally, I think that that's an interesting lesson for role-playing games to take away, is that shock value for shock value's sake sort of ends up being impotent, if you like. It's not really shocking. At least in my opinion. I think that you have to set it up. You have to have some sort of environment where it would be shocking. And this book just basically jumps from shock to shock to shock. And at some point, it's just like, oh, okay, well, we've already ate this flavor before. I know what this is. So, you know, but that's one takeaway. It would be sort of a GMing tip. You know, if you want to shock your players, set it up. Don't expect to just unleash something and then unleash something else and just for it to be shocking. I don't think that that's how shock works. I think people get used to it. They get acclimatized pretty easily to it. I certainly did with this book. So I was going to go through and just show you some examples. So here the character goes through a big thing about killing people and everything, and then it says, please note, do not do any of these things, especially do not cover your face and destroy many of the largely unprotected power stations and cell towers. Electricity is a ghost, but one you can catch and kill. Do not do that. Do not become the sort of person who gets really good at blowing power stations up while never getting caught. So, I mean, this is obviously well, you could tell what it is. It's not really an he's not really telling you not to do it. is what I'm trying to say. And then in the back of the book is basically a recruitment, trying to talk people into, joining in and destroying the world with him. Now, I know this is a work of fiction, but I also know there are a great many people in the world that actually feel this way right now. And it's a very tragic sort of a way to view the world, in my opinion, but, whatever. Oh, yeah. See, now, and there are humorous parts, just the way he kind of puts things up. There's a strict amount of people who don't understand the science behind thick girls. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. I don't know why. Just did. And I thought this was kind of interesting, too. Another cell tower erected is another spot in which God becomes blind. I thought that was really interesting from a number of perspectives. The idea, perhaps, in a campaign world of being able to erect temples or erect monuments or something like that the gods can't see through, to create areas where the gods can't see, that sort of thing. I thought that might be really fascinating in a campaign world. Without reading this book, I wouldn't have really thought of that. But I think that's a neat idea. There could be a group of people or a cult going around erecting these things, and you have to find them and discover them and try and get rid of them so the gods can see the earth again. Or perhaps you don't want the gods seeing, and perhaps it's a good thing to be blinding the gods. I have no idea. Depends on your campaign world. But I thought that was a really neat idea. And it's sort of one of those things. I don't know if it's genius. I don't know if it was just random. I'd have to read more of his books to know that. So, I really don't know. What is this one now? Oh yeah, this made me laugh. It says, I hear store and restaurant employees are quietly handing out door keys to anyone who asks. I just thought that was really funny. That's the sort of thing that this book is full of. Just basically destroy the world, destroy everything. No solutions, no road to something better. Just basically, I'm mad, I'm not getting what I want, so I'm going to destroy everything. And hopefully what follows will be better. Which, well, okay, I recommend reading a few history books just to find out why that's untenable position, to say the least. So how would I use this book in a role-playing game? Well, the thing is this character is interesting. If I hadn't read this book, I never would have believed this sort of world perspective was even possible. And though the author says that this isn't their perspective on the world, okay, but, it's a pretty insightful perspective on a fictional character, so it's interesting. But I'm certain that these sort of mindsets exist. So that being said, I could see this being interesting perspective to carry on this worldview that this book presents in, say, a faction, some kind of a faction that is trying to destroy your campaign world or trying to destroy a city. I wouldn't have them following a god because, like I say, the main character is a nihilist. Only character really, is a nihilist and a relativist. So I can't see a nihilist and a relativist really following a god. The god itself might be that and might direct the followers, but for the followers to be like that, I don't think they're going to follow a god. So you could have a group or faction or organization that's going around seeking to destroy your world, and I think this mindset would fit the characters exquisitely. So they wouldn't be replacing anything, they would just be destroying things, sort of like a barbaric horde, roaming through Rome, destroying, tearing down statues, tearing down buildings, just destroying everything that they see, because they don't like what Rome's giving them. And I think that would be an interesting way to play this. I think that the main character would also be a really good villain, sort of a big bad, if you like. But the only thing there that might be difficult is that well, if in order for this character to be a big bad, they'd have to be somebody who inherited a lot of power, because they wouldn't be capable of getting the power themselves. They have no motivation. They have no uh, sense of culpability for their own happiness. They look to the world to provide for them. They don't look in terms of providing for themselves. So that doesn't really make a very good big bad. A big bad is usually ambitious. You need a good level of ambition in your big bad. So one way around that would be to have this character sort of handed this amount of power. So this character maybe inherited a throne. So maybe this is the new king has this opinion, just wants to burn down the whole kingdom. Although that's really untenable as well, because this character, if this character's main grievance against the world is that he's not king. He wants to destroy the world because he's not king. He doesn't feel as loved and as special as his mom told him he was. The world doesn't seem to view him that way. So if he was king, he would sort of feel that way. So it'd be kind of hard to use this character in an RPG game, I think, in any other way except as sort of a mad horde moving through and destroying things. And I think that's probably how I would use this character. I would use this character, kind of keep the opinions and stuff and bring the character out in various other people that are various other NPCs that the player encounters, and just sort of portray this attitude as in the community, and that these people sort of group together for destruction, which is what the main character calls for in the back of the book, is for people to come together and start destroying things. Again, no idea what they're going to replace it with. I don't think that there's any goal to replace anything in this character's mind. No solutions, just destruction. And so I think in a group like that, the characters could be hired maybe to hunt them down and seek them out and get rid of them. Or maybe the heroes could be, they might be employed by these people, because these people would perceive the heroes as having some ambition. And so maybe being able to use them, maybe tricking them into doing something that is actually destructive, but the heroes don't realize it's destructive. I think that I would use the character that way. I think those are the things that basically make the most sense. So that's how I'd use this book. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe if it's YouTube, or leave a Rumble if this is on Rumble. I will be doing more books or reviewing more books that I've gone through. And yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Again, it's Harassment Architecture by Mike Ma. I do recommend it. I recommend this book because there are, I think, people out there like this. And if you've never encountered this sort of mindset, it's kind of an awakening. I certainly haven't. It's never occurred to me that there are people out there that just want to burn everything down and have absolutely no idea what might replace it. And the other thing that I was sort of unaware of is that there are people out there who feel completely impotent to change their own lot in life. Now, I know there are people that are probably unable to in certain societies and so forth, but this guy lives in our society. It's a very strange perspective. I mean, he could talk about, going and getting a trade. Going to university, yeah, that's kind of a rabbit hole these days, but getting a trade certainly isn't. You can, but anyway, this person seems like that's not good enough. I don't know. They want to be on their couch all day playing Xbox. And they think if they burn everything down that that'll be accomplished somehow. He does seem to be challenged by the lack of challenges in the world, but unwilling to challenge himself. So, disgruntled with his own lot in life, but upset that there aren't any challenges for him. He can't perceive that changing his lot in life would be a good challenge. I don't understand that. You would think that that would be an obvious. You could put those two things together, but the character in this book didn't. I don't know. And the author, to his credit, he wrote this book. So obviously he's not the character in the book, because the character in this book would be incapable of writing a book. That's for sure. All right, so thank you. And until next time.